Cook County, I would serve my full term.
Absolutely.
I believe strongly that we need a fair, impartial chief law enforcement officer who can use the power of subpoena, grand jury, and indictment to bring some order in this county that is known nationally as Crook County. We have more corruption, more thievery, more abuse, more waste than anywhere else in the country.
Right.
It's not Louisiana and New Jersey that are the most corrupt places. Now it's Crook County, Illinois. So I think we need a state's attorney who's going to work hand in hand with the U.S. attorney so that we have this kind of government that doesn't abuse the taxpayers, doesn't use the taxpayers' resources for their own particular personal gain, but for the gain and benefit of the taxpayers who should be getting the benefit of that money.
Absolutely.
And that's what I would do.
Absolutely.
You know, I agree with you in that these issues have nothing to do with the office that I'm running for. And we should be talking about violence. We should be talking about guns and gangs and drugs and all of those things that our office handles. I would hope that the media would play their part and focus on what's important.
Absolutely.
Is it important, you know, donations, or is it important to talk about, you know, how are we going to stop this violence that's killing so many of our young kids today? I think, you know, hopefully when I go around and I speak to community groups, to forums, at churches, my message is that. My message is focusing on what we need to do and violence and our core mission in the state's attorney's office. So I believe I'm doing my part. Sometimes I have to respond to the questions. I have to respond to the media. I kind of wish the media would focus on what really is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What are your candidacy is very historic. What does it mean to you, and what do you think it may mean to, you know, other, like, you know, the Latino community in Chicago at large, with you being the first Hispanic woman up for this office?
You know, for me, it is historic, you know, but I always felt in the primary and now that I was the most qualified.
Absolutely.
And so I felt that I was the most qualified person for this job, and I continue to feel that. I know it's historic, and you know, when you're running, sometimes you don't realize the effect that you have and the influence that you have on other people. And it's been very humbling to get letters and to get emails from people I don't know who say to me, one woman emailed me and she said in the primary, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, the very fact that you're doing this is an inspiration. And so, you know, I think that's wonderful. I think the young girls behind me need to know that you can, yes you can.
Right.
You know, as you say, si se puede, yes you can. And I think it's important for all of us to know that, you know, this particular office, it doesn't matter, you know, what you are, who you are, where you come from, you can do it. You can do it.
Absolutely. Is there anything else about your campaign or the issues that you think are important, you know, for people in Cook County that I didn't ask you about that you want to speak to?
I think we hit on.
And within that, can you tell me a little bit more about community prosecution, just for our audience who may be unfamiliar with that?
Okay. I think we hit on, you know, domestic violence. I talked about that is an issue that we have to stay on top of, and it kind of ties in with the community prosecutions offices and what it was. Community prosecutions were offices that we had scattered throughout the city and a few in the suburbs, and it was a storefront where victims and community residents could go. Cases that came out of that particular area were handled what we call vertically, and that is the same state's attorney handles it from the beginning to the end. That doesn't always happen when you go through the system. You know, it changes hands. And so that continuity was a plus, and the people in the community appreciated that and enjoyed that. And our assistant state's attorneys would also take part in the CAPS program, you know, with the Chicago Police, and they would attend those meetings. So there was more of a presence in the communities, which I think for us is important, and it's important, again, as we talked about earlier, to restore that trust, because there's definitely a distrust, and we need to do our part to restore that.
My final question is, I agree and definitely see your point of view on many of these issues, and I even agree with like the frustration, and I won't label it outrage. I'll let you label it in the way that the Cook County Board transfer of power, quote unquote, was handled. And you're right, there was some shady dealings in that for like someone that didn't have like, you know, political experience before that to get into such an important, prestigious role. However, like if you are defeated this time, will you be able to handle the loss with a little bit more public grace than that was? Because I understand your frustration, but you know that the media hit you really hard with that, and you may not have done yourself any favors politically to get across a lot of these good ideas that you have.
Well, I take the long-term view, and as one who lost my parents by the age of 11, I recognize my own mortality.
Absolutely.
And I know that in 50 years, none of this will matter anyway. And who is going to know whether you and I sat here 50 years from now and talked about these issues?
Hopefully you leave them out.
I hope so. But the point is that we all are going to face that final end, some sooner, some later. And the issue is, how do we choose to live our lives? Do we want to accumulate more stuff, or do you want to leave the community that we are part of a little bit better off because we were here? Absolutely. And I choose the latter. And I'm not concerned about the media portrayal, because media are also, skewed by their relationships, and they don't always report the truth. They don't get the truth, let the truth get in the way. So I feel strongly that with a history of electoral fraud, election fraud here in Cook County, when I knew that the cartridges were not coming from the areas they were strongly Republican, pardon me for being a little bit skeptical. And I had my supporters go down there to join Todd Stroger and his supporters who were already there to make sure that the vote was respected of every single voter in Cook County, and that criminal activity was not going to be tolerated by people who can manipulate the process or think they can skew the will of the voters. So I wanted to go there to be present with my experts, my supporters, and we were there for 3 days after that election to make sure that a proper sample recount took place, canvass took place, to make sure that the voters' will was respected. And when I realized that the margin of separation between us was 80,000 votes and it was not likely to be bridged, I thought that the right thing to do was to concede and congratulate Todd Stroger, which I did. And I continued to work with him. I worked with his Chief of Staff, Lance Tyson, in the past, and his current Chief of Staff, Joe Fratto. And my motto is, you got to show up and never give up. And in the end, I live by a motto of death before surrender. I will never give up. I will never give in. And I will let history judge me, but I will do what I think is appropriate for the benefit of the entire community, not only myself. And people can judge me as they will. And if I lose an election, I can go back to practicing law, and I will live happily and stay at home at night with my family rather than go out campaigning all over this county, which is a tall task, believe me. But I feel privileged to be able to do what I do. And I thank the voters who appreciate the fact that I'm an advocate for those who don't have a voice in county government.
Absolutely.
And if you ask a lot of people whose commissioners voted for increase of the sales tax, for example, do you want your sales tax increase? I would say that those commissioners in those districts, 99% of their voters will say, no, I don't want my tax increase. But do they respect their voters' wishes? No, they vote their own self-interest. And that's what I find despicable.
Absolutely. Well, I definitely appreciate your time. I wish you well, in continuing on the fight and continuing to stay true to your convictions. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to address, or anything that I asked you earlier that you want to flesh out a little bit more?
No, I think we covered most of what we needed to.
Certainly, certainly. Well, I thank you so much for taking time with us.
Pleasure.
Very good luck in your race and in your term as commissioner.
The voters here in Cook County have a clear choice between someone who is part of the political privileged class and someone like myself who fights for those who don't have a voice, who are not part of that privileged political class. And my job is to sharpen the issues, the awareness, and make sure that people know what they're voting. Just because I happen to be a Republican from the suburbs and may not be African American does not mean that I don't represent the interests of that community.
Absolutely.
And I think people need to not do the instinctive thing and vote for every Democrat up and down the line, because clearly it has not been in their best interest for the last 60 years. So you got to look at every office separately, every candidate separately, and sometimes you got to do what's in your best interest. And I think that I would represent the interests of the entire community.
Absolutely. And one of the things we want to get across our audience is what we're hoping is that a lot of these old school political labels are kind of dying off.
That's right.
Conservatives, liberals, most individuals probably have a lot of both.
Right.
So I'm not sure how much a lot of those really add up. I do think a lot of people just knee-jerk Democrat, Republican. I'm sorry. And it's a lot more complex than that.